Hello DesignTV, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Elissa Black, Executive Director of NYC by Design, a non-profit committed to empowering, supporting and growing this city's incredible design sector. I'm joining you today in celebration of our internationally renowned annual Design Festival, which is taking place right now through November 18. This festival really celebrates the immense creativity and diversity of New York City's design community, with hundreds of events celebrating design innovation, resilience, creativity, sustainability, and much more. Be sure to check out our festival website at festival.nyxdesign.org so you can be a part of New York City's official celebration of design. And while you're at it, please do mark your calendars for the return of our 10th anniversary festival next year, running from May 10 to 20 in 2022. We hope to see you there. This week during the festival, we're taking over DesignTV by SANDOW to spotlight New York City's thriving design sector through a series of fascinating videos and conversations with local design leaders. So without further ado, please do sit back and enjoy this fascinating exploration of design in New York City's 5 boroughs.
Hi everyone, I'm Valerie Hoffman, Program Director for NYC by Design. In May 2021, we introduced Self-Guided Journeys, an immersive online platform touring some of New York City's most vibrant design districts, uncovering the engine of creativity in every borough. From hidden design gems to creative studios, cultural centers, talented local design studios, and one-of-a-kind architectural feats, you can visit Soho and Tribeca, Southwest Brooklyn, Long Island City, St. George, and the South Bronx at any time. We want to take you to some of these neighborhoods with us today. Before we dive in, here's a warm welcome to NYC from some designers that represent the collective power of our expansive creative community.
The activity of other creative people like doing their thing and trying to like make it happen, like that's home for me.
We made it our duty to represent our people the right way.
It's really about the diversity, it's really about the layers of history.
I really appreciate this location, so many different cultures and so many different backgrounds.
It's a really wide open, wacky range of individuals.
There's such a cross-section of artists and designers and performers.
It's hard not to be inspired by the architecture you're given as the basis of a lot of your design. Amazingly interesting New York bones that only could happen in New York.
Design in New York City in one word: persistent.
Vibrant.
Forward.
Eclectic.
Fearless.
Imagination.
Bold.
Cutting edge.
Exciting.
Fascinating.
Progressive.
Matrix.
Stimulating. Resilient.
True. It's what it is. It is only in New York City, so you already know. Real.
Now let's begin our journey. Join me today as we venture to Soho and Tribeca. The trendy area emerged from the gritty 1970s and 80s when struggling artists moved into the area en masse. Still largely characterized by cobblestone streets and cast iron buildings, the downtown Manhattan neighborhood is now a design district and hosts to upscale showrooms, design studios, and restaurants. The district is an international icon, and the design spaces you'll find here represent some of the top names in NYC's creative industry. First, we'll visit Studio Zung, a modern full-service interdisciplinary studio and shop. And then UnHistoric Townhouse, a striking structure with a twisted brick facade. Next, Wayan, an eclectic restaurant designed with a tropical meets downtown vibe. Followed by a visit to Egg Collective, a female-owned and operated showroom that offers sculptural, heirloom-quality furniture, lighting accessories, and our last stop will be Soho Design District, a prime historic and design destination.
Tribeca is such a great space for design in New York City. It does really feel like a community.
I think it's one of the most iconic neighborhoods in the world. It's hard not to be inspired by the architecture you're given as the basis of a lot of your design. Because the architecture you're given is amazingly interesting New York bones that only could happen in New York.
Soho is just such an important neighborhood to invest in and to be in.
Tribeca is chic.
Soho is international.
Creative.
Iconic.
My name is Tommy Zung, and we're in Shop Zung, Studio Zung. I started Studio Zung after moving from California, actually into this neighborhood 20 plus years ago. Since moving to New York, I've been based in downtown Manhattan, but this space we opened about 2 years ago and started with the studio first, built the entire space out, and then a few months later, built out Shop Zung. Studio Zung is a boutique architecture and interior design firm. We concentrate on emotive sensory architecture and interiors. All of the undertones of all of the design is sustainable design. That was born out of my godfather, Buckminster Fuller, whose architecture partners with my father. We're known for like a warm minimalism, I would say, and a holistic design. So we design everything from a door handle to the entire residence, to extracting the stone out of the earth and how it's going to be coursed on a building. So everything in between. When I moved from California to Soho, it was a very, very rich artistic neighborhood. And that multidisciplinary environment, it really moved me coming from California. It's fallen away recently, and I thought that because we have Studio Zung, which the shop is supported by the studio primarily, we are not beholden to selling anything or taking any compromises on the artisans we want to feature or the pieces that we make. So therefore people could come back to Soho, hopefully, and discover something that they may not have discovered prior to storefronts struggling. What you can find in Shop Zung are objets from artisans around the world. It's highly curated, but more importantly, it's mindfully made. We were designing each piece of the residence or the building, and through traveling and going to places where we're working with artisans, it was natural to start to bring them into the shop when retail started to slow down in Soho. And it's just such an important neighborhood to invest in and to be in, that I thought it was an opportunity for people to discover what we do, but more importantly, the other artisans around the world who we had been working with, who we could showcase.
My name is Cedric Van Gersten.
I'm Sean Sullivan. I'm a partner at the Rockwell Group.
And you are here in Wayan, a restaurant located in Soho. My wife is from Indonesia. We have several restaurants in Jakarta, and we've been traveling there for the last 10 years. You know, in New York City, there's no really Indonesian restaurant. So we're like, you know, it'd be interesting. We would be very excited to kind of bring those flavor and this concept in New York City.
With Cedric and Ochi, his wife, they pour so much passion into what they do that the design process really begins with them.
We were working with Rockwell and Sean's team. They had a good sense of exactly what we wanted, the style, the elements of the stone, the wood, and the greenery. And as soon as we start laying down the plans and putting it all together, it was, they knew exactly what we wanted, and it's incredible. It's like as soon as you walk in Wayan, it's like you're traveling back in Bali.
We got really inspired by, just creating a local and authentic restaurant that at the same time feels at home in this neighborhood. The space itself is a really authentic neighborhood building.
We really like the layout of this building. As you walk in the side of the restaurant, you have the first room. There's a little bit of dining room space, but the bar and all the greenery on top of it. As you make your way in the back dining room, there's a little corridor and you have all the spices that we use and a little display of ingredients. Then a little sitting area in front of the kitchen where you can see the light kitchen, and then you have the back main dining room on the back.
The bones of it are already there, and what we did is we added a bunch of layers that we had built in Indonesia and shipped over. Combining the two, we sort of had a fusion of both this Indonesian style and this local kind of New York restaurant. The idea of the food and the menu is something that we developed in parallel with the design.
The vision with the cuisine, it's from all the memories and travels going to Indonesia. So it's just eating, trying things and exploring and going to those remote islands and going to those little fisherman area, and you taste something like this is incredible. And from that memory and trying to remember those flavor, recreating that. It's all presented in beautiful handcrafted bowls and plate, and everything is put in the middle of the table, and we recommend to share with all the table.
He's taken, I think, those inspirations, and I think he's dialed it into sort of fun, shareable plates and menu items for sort of a New York customer. Someone who wants to go out and taste something that really transports them to somewhere else, but also feels sort of familiar.
We're very lucky and blessed with our neighborhood here. We were very well received.
One thing that I really love about this neighborhood is I think it's one of the most iconic neighborhoods in the world. Every time we get the opportunity to work in Soho, it's hard not to be inspired by the architecture you're given as the basis of a lot of your design. Because the architecture you're given is they're all very different, but they all have such amazingly interesting New York bones that only could happen in New York.
My name is Crystal Ellis, and we're at the Egg Collective showroom. I co-founded Egg Collective about a decade ago with Hillary Petrie and Stephanie Beamer. We're a design and manufacturing company with a showroom in Tribeca and a wood shop in Brooklyn. We design and manufacture everything that you see. I met my two business partners when we were 18 in undergrad, and we all fell in love with design and with making things. It's been, I guess, almost 2 decades of us working towards this dream that we have here now, a showroom in Tribeca. It's a wonderful neighborhood, and we love the historic building that we found ourselves in. This showroom, when we found it, was actually a lawyer's office, so it looks quite different now. We loved the corner location and we loved all the natural light, but we had to do a full renovation to get it to look like it is now. Our background in architecture really helped, so we actually designed the interior ourselves and oversaw the construction process. So everything you see from the walls to the floors is part of that design process. We also partnered with some fabulous people to get it done. So the walls are actually by a company called Calidus Guild, which is local. This fabric on these ottomans is by another local designer. And so we've tried to incorporate that into this space as well, showing the works of other contemporary designers and artisans. I'd say our ethos is rooted in our beginnings. So we studied architecture, but we fell in love with the process of making. So we're equally in love with the design process as we are with the process of making things. It's very near and dear to us. That's why we keep a space locally where the pieces are made. And so we're trying to put out the highest quality products to our clients, and we think in doing so that has a lot to do with the craftsmanship as well as the design itself. Our community here in Tribeca has been fabulous. We are friends with our neighbors. We know them by name and they know us, and that's been fantastic. Outside of that, Tribeca is such a great space for design in New York City. We have many colleagues who have showrooms near here, and so it's been wonderful to be in proximity to those other galleries. We really respect the work of other designers out there, and one of the things we love most about New York City is that it does really feel like a community that we can be a part of.
Thank you for joining us today on a design-filled journey through Soho and Tribeca. If you're in the area, we invite you to visit some of these creative spaces live today in Soho and Tribeca from 4 to 8 p.m. You're invited to visit select destinations to hear from the leading voices behind the studios, landmarks, and institutions. And you may even get to experience in-process design demonstrations. Visit festival.nycxdesign.org today to plan your self-guided journeys live experience and to explore all of the events taking place now across the 5 boroughs. And a big thank you to our partners, sponsors, event organizers, and attendees for making this edition of the festival a success.
Oh my God, Allen Stone is in the house, and we are taking one. Hey everybody, I am outside of Fotografiska, brand new, amazing project in New York City. And today we have, oh yes, Allen Stone. So come on and let's talk about design and music.
Every time I see you, I'm just like, everything is so cool that you are involved in.
That's right, you too. That's why I have a different world. This is like design meeting music. Design is meeting music today.
That's true.
Right? This was a mission from the 1890s.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was. So I'm bringing you back to your roots.
Yeah, perfect. Is it connected to this church right here?
Yes. It's a little chapel bar.
Okay,
All right?
let's
All
go.
right, let's go.
Wow.
This is a wowzer, right?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, yeah. This, Alan, is attached to that church next door. Roman and Williams are this one team, and they used to be set designers in LA, and then they came here, and the whole space is another architecture firm called CetraRuddy. Isn't it beautiful, though?
It's so gorgeous.
Yeah.
I always love when they redirect light. I don't know who they are, the proverbial designers, but like just covering it and shooting it up.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
Okay, you ready to talk? You want to talk?
I'd love to. I've been dying to sit and visit.
Okay, so let's go up.
Let's do it.
All right.
I'll follow you.
Okay.
Okay. No, I'll lead. That's the beauty of music, is like you can change it, but the melody is the foundation, and the melody is what brings you back. So you can do whatever to the the gravel underneath, but the foundation of the melody will always bring you back. That's like a really cool part of the song.
Yeah.
It's almost like, you know, remodeling a building. It's like, this looks like a church from the outside. You come in here, man, they got a bar, and it takes on this new form, which is special.
Yeah, we have to talk about building balance.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. On I Will Give You Blue, I'm sure it comes in different ways for different songs, but like, where are the little pieces that you start to go, oh, here's a song developing?
Yeah, it was written for my wife, like our wedding. Like, there's not enough songs about the reality of the work that it takes to be in love. But I wanted to write a song that was true to me and my relationship with love, because it takes work, it takes energy, it takes effort, it takes perseverance, it takes communication, it takes all these things that, we're gonna tell you what, don't come natural to me, you know? And Give You Blue was an attempt at doing that.
You know, you're very poetic. There's something that was like really touching in that one for me was, I can build a mountain, because I am just a man.
I can't move a mountain.
Oh, I can't move a mountain.
Yeah, I am just a man.
I am just a man. But that's so tender, that's so beautiful, I am just a man. You know, like, who says that?
Yeah, the next line is, can't undo what happens, but I will understand. And although it may hurt, I'll tell you the truth.
I'll tell you the truth. You sing it, not me.
When your
sky is gray.
Great voice. I will give you blue. Want me to sing it?
I do.
Okay.
You will.
Oh, well, I can't stop the rain. I will keep you dry. When the shore feels far away, baby, I'll be by your side. And when the storms arise, baby, I will shelter you. 'Cause when your sky is gray, hey, I will give you blue.
Aww. I love that. That was so beautiful.
Thank you.
You know what's kind of interesting when I think about design and music is that they're very connected. Like, architecture and music are very connected, from like the Greek amphitheaters and the Sydney Opera House, like playing in spaces that like capture sound and what it does, right?
The best part about music to me, and art period, is there's no telling what might take place in this room. The designer's not gonna come in and be like, no, the only thing that's ever gonna happen here is X, Y, Z. This space is completely its own canvas once it's already been painted.
That's what it is.
And with music, what's really cool about that same idea is that you'll go through life and you'll write a song. That song will mean and have a pivot point for your life.
Right.
But you put it out into the world, and it can mean anything for anybody. That to me is like the beauty and the evolution of the craft and design of a song. It's not just my song. Like, I'm just the vessel. Just as like an architect, he just organizes it and makes this incredibly beautiful space that now is functioning for so many different purposes.
It seems like everything that you do, it's really artistic, and the album cover is beautiful.
Thank
so
you.
what are some, I know Rudy's in there, there's like a little rocket in there.
Yeah,
like,
so the album is a picture of me on the front, and I'm very stoic. All of the animations around are beautiful, positive things. My son, my wife, music, the things I love, all these really beautiful, positive things. And the balance there is like, what's inside isn't dependent on what's outside.
Yeah.
And then the back cover is, you know, this like cheeky smiling, and all the animations are super dark. You know, it's like my relationship with alcohol and touring and living it out of a suitcase and all these like the real character builders in my life.
That incredible album, that blue.
The vinyl was this translucent blue. And that was cool.
That was so gorgeous. That's design, Alan.
But all those things speak to really what
Yeah.
the balance that I've attempted to build in my life.
So you grew up in a little town.
Grew up in a
Yeah.
one stoplight town in northeastern Washington State. My dad ministered and pastored a church for about 30 years out there. But my folks sang, you know, that we were a singing family.
Nice.
Being the youngest, I've always been a narcissist, and I realized at an early age that I could get everybody's attention if I stood up and sang.
Right.
We sang as a family at first, you know, every Sunday. We go to church twice a week, and there's always singing at service, which is
singing.
yeah, the wonderful aspect of church is the music.
Yeah, definitely.
No matter how good or how bad the music
Right.
is, it's just singing with
Yeah.
other people
Yeah.
is very therapeutic.
Mm-hmm.
I always was bugging my dad, man, can you teach me the guitar, Dad? He'd grab my hand like this and he said, your fingers aren't long enough yet.
Oh.
Fingers aren't long enough to
that's
play
so
the chords.
cute.
So finally I convinced him, just teach me a couple. The first song I learned was a Green Day tune, Time of Your Life.
Did you play that?
Yeah, I can play
yeah,
it.
sorry.
If I remember it. Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go. It's something unpredictable, but in the end it's right. I hope you had the time of your life. I learned this song, and then like 3 weeks after learning it was like the 8th grade graduation. You know, we had 8th grade graduation for the class ahead of me. And so they asked me to play this tune in front of
Oh my God.
And I thought, dude, I was like, this is it, you know,
Yeah.
this is my gig.
Yeah. When you're designing a song or when you're starting a song, maybe there's one we could break up a little bit for me.
I wrote a song a while back on a plane. It was just a melody and a thought. I had a friend, we were dating at the time, and like, I don't know, we were fighting or something, and she said, if you dig, you'll find dirt. That stuck with me. In that moment, I kind of just started picking through this idea of keeping your dirt on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna tell it, I'm gonna keep it right here so that people don't have to go digging for it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna wear it on my chest.
That's a beautiful song. Love where you're at.
Love
right?
where you're at, yeah.
Yeah.
That dirt on the surface so you don't gotta dig. People that make me nervous try to hide all the sins. Oh, well, I've got no reason just to cover my tracks. My favorite part of learning is just loving where I'm at. It's kind of that same round design, right? Like, yeah, love where you're at. Keep your dirt on the surface, and you love where you're at.
So beautiful.
I always want to be like a reflection towards the up. When you construct a song like Love Where You're At, that intention is in the design.
You were talking to yourself in a way, right?
Yeah, really. It was really about myself and coming to terms with
like love where you're at, Alan. Love
really
where you're at, right?
Exactly. Like love where you are, even though sometimes.
That's pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah, it's hopefully it's always heavy. If you're gonna sing a song for the rest of your life, it better mean something.
Yeah. So I do really think that everyone is like responding to Consider Me, right?
Yeah, totally.
And that's also like such a beautiful word. Like it's not like love me or pick me or choose me. It's so humble. It's such a beautiful word, consider.
It is, yeah, it is.
Will you sing a little of that one?
I will, yeah. If you're looking for somebody who will love you through the night and be there in the morning with the same look in their eyes. If you're looking for somebody who will listen your thoughts and understand the way you feel with no words at all. If you need appreciation without compensation, someone to give you what you need. If you're looking for some magic that will not end tragic, darling, all I ask is you consider me. Consider me. Consider me. Consider me. Won't you consider me?
Oh my God.
It's like one thing about guitars that are, I feel like a lot of guitar players are like ashamed to talk about it, but I always
How
feel
much you love the guitar?
how good it looks.
Yeah.
How a guitar looks initially is what makes me want to pick it up off the thing and try to
totally.
play it.
Yeah, totally.
And then once you, it's got to feel good.
Yeah, yeah.
But the initial connection is the design and how beautiful it is.
Some people are afraid to say that design should be beautiful, besides make you feel better or solve a problem or whatever. Like, so when you say the same thing with the guitar, hell yeah, that's gorgeous.
It's always what draws me initially to anything is the look of it. Yeah, if you really sit back and interpret what design is, it's people putting their own character inside something, right? Like attempting to try and relay themselves in a medium.
Yeah.
And that speaks to people. It's an ingredient in the salad that's like very important that maybe layman folk like me don't think about as much, but when you're...
You should, because you are all design. I mean, you are. You said, I play my music, I want people to feel something.
Yeah,
right?
whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever it is. That's the same thing. There's the connection between design and music. I think really taps into the name of your album and what you're going through too, which is building balance. It's so nice.
Yeah, thank you.
It's definitely so interesting to hear about like how you design your songs and
thank you for having me.
which we love so much. Yeah. All right. Allen Stone, everybody. Oh my God. Yeah. You guys can clap, you know, it's okay. Everyone's excited. I used to sing in the church too.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What was your go-to song?
I don't know. Tell me one of yours and I'll tell you.
I
It's
always
so
really
long
loved
ago.
It Is Well With My Soul.
It is well.
It is well
with my soul.
with my soul.
It is well.
It is
well with my soul.
Hi everyone, I'm Grace Bewley-Hunt, Luxe's Home and Design Editor, and I am so happy to be here on DesignTV today with an amazing talent. We have Josh Greene of Josh Greene Design joining us. Josh is based in Manhattan, and I had the privilege of producing a feature on a really beautiful apartment. I've really admired Josh's style for years, and kind of early on in my Luxe tenure, I got to visit his beautiful office in Nomad and see some scouting pictures of this apartment. And you know, there are moments as an editor where your heart flutters, and this was one of them. So I'm so happy he's here today to kind of dig a bit deeper into the design of this space. So this should be a fun chat. Josh, welcome. How are you? Where are you?
Thank you for that very kind introduction.
Tell me a little bit about how this client came into your life and kind of how this project got its legs.
So years ago when I was doing interiors at a firm called Sawyer Burson, I worked with an architect there, a woman named Yona Brisky. And this project ended up coming to her way, but she is more of an architect, and this had a strong decorative component to it. So she brought us on, and that's how the relationship was formed. She had a relationship with the client, and so yeah, it worked out really well. So it was a great collaboration.
Kind of, can you tell me a bit about when you first walked into the apartment, your first impressions, kind of what the initial changes that really came to mind were?
It was the biggest thing actually right when you walk into the apartment was the size, the enormous size of this apartment's entrance gallery. It was just huge, almost too big. It felt like you were wasting space. We had looked at other plans that other units had done, because it's one apartment per floor, and they're pretty much all the same layout. So you could see over the years how certain people had eaten up into that entrance gallery to give part of that space back to the kitchen. In our instance, that's what we did. We gave that space back to the kitchen to sort of enlarge the kitchen, and then also added a powder, which also sort of ate into that space. Oh, the other thing, the dining room was also super large, like too large.
Okay.
So in the images that you see in the project, on the far wall, there is a fairly deep and substantial built-in unit that runs the entire length of the wall. And that wasn't there before, so the room was probably another, almost 20 inches bigger. So it really had these gracious spaces, and we were able to eat into it a little bit, just to get more functionality or more storage.
So interesting. So actually that beautiful wall treatment in the dining room is 20 inches of storage. What's behind those doors?
So the mirror door, so Yona had created this beautiful built-in storage with fluted columns or reeded columns. And in it is just more storage for dishes, platters, china, placemats. It's all walnut lined, and then there are drawers in there as well. So that's what ate into the room, but it still was plenty of space to have a big dinner party.
There's that amazing kind of pearly pink plaster in the living room. And then there's the riotous cobalt library with that really thick lacquer. And of course, the beautiful dining room paneling. So I kind of wanted to just talk to you about what that was like how you landed on those decisions in each room, kind of what was it really meant to achieve? And also, what was it like to collaborate with those artisans?
It was a company called Fresco, who I've worked with in the past and who is amazing. And it's a treat to go to their their studio and look through all of their samples. You can get super inspired. So I knew that I wanted, for the living room, to have something like that, have it be very special. But we didn't want to carry it throughout the rest of the apartment. It didn't need to be in the entry. It didn't need to be in the dining room. So in the entryway, we ended up using a sort of pink metallic, just slightly pink hue. The client really loves pink. And it's actually very pretty the way it's on the 7th floor. So it's just above the tree line. And when the sun sets, and it looks, it faces east. When the sun sets, it faces west. When the sun sets, it's beautiful. And the whole place, because of the pink, just lights up and is a dream. So we created that played off of that. The client likes pink. So that was sort of where we that was a part of why we ended up with pink or that's a warm tone. And in the dining room was just totally different. I think we all just fell in love with the wall covering. It was from a company called Oza Brie that I had gotten at John Roselli. And I didn't know the company before. I hadn't ever actually used them. But I just loved the pattern. And the colors were so great.
Was the wallpaper first or that black and gilt chest? I remember that was kind of a jump off point for that scheme, but which came first?
Definitely the wallpaper came first. So okay. The wallpaper on the rug, where the rug is kind of this acid green pattern, that all was sort of from the beginning. And then we built in, we didn't have a light fixture, we didn't have a dining table, we didn't have, the cabinet or the sconces. So when we started looking at dining tables, I think the client actually found that table and really liked it. I really liked the leg shape of it. And it had, you know, sort of an ebony wood with a brass trim, brass inlay detail from Holly Hunt. And I thought, you know, actually, even though I wouldn't normally think to put like black and gold with this like very soft kind of teals and silvers and golds, it really, it worked. So I was like, all right, well, and then, so we had the table and we were figuring out like what the chairs were going to be. So like brass chairs worked. And then that piece was from a gallery in Palm Beach. And it's so ornate. I mean, it's very, very, you know, it's very ornate, a very, very, you know, opulent. And I was worried because the paper is soft, but actually it worked out really well. And then I tied it in like with the sconces. I was like, all right, well, we'll just do, you know, a brass sconce and a black shade. And then this idea of black and gold there's enough of it like throughout. And then I found these Carl Springer hurricanes, which are overscaled and like humongous and really cool. And I love Carl Springer. And it was interesting, you know, you have the super antique French, you know, cabinet, and then you have these 70s Carl Springer things with, you know, modern apparatus lighting. It just was, it was a good mix, and the client was totally game to take those chances, which was amazing.
You mentioned the word opulent for this dining room, which is, I think, actually a perfect word for it. But what I love about it and what I think is so successful is that it's also like has all this sneaky utility. It's got this beautiful wall of paneling that's like secretly crazy storage. And I know that there were some other, you know, design decisions you made that are very utility first, but you wouldn't know it. So I would love if you could talk through some of those.
Well, I think most of my furniture plans tend to be, you know, functional. Like I like functional furniture plans. I think flow is really important, and I always think like not what is, you know, going to be the most evocative furniture plan, but how is the family or the resident going to use it really on a day-to-day basis. In this instance, they were, you know, the furniture plan, we looked at probably, you know, half a dozen for the living room, and settled on the one that we had. And yeah, so most of the time I'm trying to think of other spots throughout the apartment there are, and that was really like the contractor would find little places and we would, you know, add storage or, you know, a bookshelf or, you know, a flush door to that, you know, you wouldn't really know is there, but, you know, has access to space. So there were things like that throughout the apartment, which was great. And part of that is from, you know, renovating a pre-war and we really kind of ripped everything out.
I thought that was so interesting that your client was so bold too. You know, it takes a bold client to make some of those decisions. And I remember there was this one quote in the feature about how you presented a scheme for the living room, and she was actually like, "Give me more. I need more crazy," or whatever. So I thought that was so interesting, and I would love if you could kind of share the before and after there, like what changes came about as a result of that.
So it was so long ago. So I remember it was like a blue, she likes blue. And so there was a blue scheme, really interesting curtain fabric. I remember, I still have never used the fabric, but I like it a lot. It's kind of it's a geometric, but a broken geometric, you know, and a satiny blue with some sort of graphic on it. And it was, you know, super interesting, and she liked it. We worked through a lot in the office together, settled on that. She went home, showed her husband and her son, and then came back, and the director was, you know, it's not enough. It's too flat. So I have a feeling that sort of tone ended up going to the master, but we basically just started over. So then it was like, okay, we're gonna look for new rugs. And that's why you see the rug that's in the scheme now, which is a really bold geometric pattern, that's an all over pattern. And the curtain fabric, which is kind of I think it's like an Indian paisley with some shots of pink in it, and teal. And then we pulled out all of those colors. So we pulled out like the teal for the sofa and these, you know, the sort of burnt oranges and like the pink leather for the game chairs around the game table. And then we just, you know, really built it from there.
So it's a lot kind of talking just more pattern, veering away from their expected colors, kind of.
Right. Yeah. So I think it was like something that was, had some impact. But the room is still, the other thing though is, like they still wanted it to be soothing and to be, comfortable. And I also always think about how things look at night. And so it was important that the room also, was super warm at night.
Is there a favorite room for you, and which one and why?
I think I like the dining room. I like the dining room and I like them all, but I like the dining room and I like the library. I think the library is pretty fun. It's intense, it's dark, it's moody, there's like a lot of color. And the thing is, I love it when clients have, a lot of people, want to put in a library, but they don't really have enough books to fill it. And it was nice that, the clients are big readers and have a lot of interesting books. So it's always fun to put the books away in somebody's library and see the types of things they read. And I like that because nowadays, it's funny, nowadays, like, in terms of, a lot of people have like picture books or coffee table books, but not as many, with the e-readers and all of that.
So you didn't have to go book shopping for her. You didn't have to do the bookstores.
No.
I love it.
The interesting thing about that room is it was supposed to be more of not a Robin's egg, not a Tiffany for the walls, but the samples just, I don't know, the first round of samples that we had were just much darker than, or I think we had a bunch of samples and we all gravitated towards the darker, more cobalt. It really made everything, it was just richer. It just made it pop more. So It wasn't the intention when we were conceptualizing that room, but we knew we wanted a high lacquer, paneled room, but it was interesting that the color ended up being that color. And that's one of the things is that you can't always plan for everything in a project. I find there are many happy accidents, especially with color. So I think a lot of times when you overthink color or try to get it too perfectly, let's say you don't have to be so perfect with color. I think a lot of times the nuances that are maybe, the color that you pick that isn't exactly in reality what you were thinking is sometimes the better color because it creates like a diversity, it's like a difference.
I think color is so hard, and it's so hard to prepare for in advance. Are you saying it's kind of a bit more instinctual? Like you just need to see it and rather than being like, I want to have a navy room, like kind of just like it's more visceral, it sounds like.
I think most of the time you can overthink color and when really a lot of times it's okay even if it's not exactly what you thought it was going to be in your mind. But I can say picking paint colors on Zoom does not work.
I imagine that's challenging.
Yeah, I was like, that's been one of the things about getting back to the office has been nice because I was, somebody on my team was on a job site and we were picking colors over Zoom and it was like, I don't know what I'm picking. So it's been nice to be in the office with a fan deck and
Nice. Do you feel like this project, beyond this color learning, kind of pushed you in any new directions or, how does it fit within your portfolio?
It's funny, I've been talking about this a lot lately, because of my background of working for, Ralph Lauren or Sawyer Burson or Michael Smith, I'm able to do, I'm very comfortable doing, to me, this feels like it has a lot of traditional elements. And it's a proper Upper East Side, pre-war building, and with all those things that come with it. So it's more traditional for what I think I gravitate towards individually, but it's still, I always find that it's still really rewarding every time you work in like a different project and a little bit of a different style. Like I can focus on using the types of fabric vendors that I wouldn't normally work with, or I can shop at antique dealers that I wouldn't normally shop at. And so it expands your, or maybe I hadn't shopped at those dealers since my days at Ralph Lauren. So every time you work on a project that's a little bit of a different style, it pushes you out of your, your normal things, and then you learn, and you try different things, and you try new things. So I like that aspect of it, but it is, I think, for what other people think of when they look at me and my work, is it's like, wait, this, blue traditional, lady bedroom on the Upper East Side is very different than like, the project that I did in Dumbo last year, which was for a young guy, and it was very modern and super cool. And I got to work with, a totally different type of, that was more like 60s Italian furniture, whereas this is, 18th century furniture. I don't know that it helps or hurts. I think that for me, it's just as long as I can make the client happy and create something that's really beautiful, then I'm happy.
It was an honor to feature it in Luxe, and really fun to revisit it. Thank you so much, Josh. And
thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to, work with you guys.
Wonderful. Well, we'll see you guys all next time. Thanks for tuning in to Design TV.
Welcome to Design Talks Now, the Visionary Series, where we investigate current tones and creative approaches to today's most critical challenges through the lens of design. This visionary series on experience design features an elite group of design leaders commanding the field at its center while exploring the powerful potential of technology-infused design that creates transcendent, multidimensional moments. In 2020, Design Pavilion went virtual to keep the dialogue alive, and Design Talks Now was born. In person for the first time since 2019, Design Talks Now, the Visionary Series, was recorded at Neue House, New York City, in front of an intimate studio audience. Join us now for this deep dive into the magic of immersive design. Let's get awkward. Emily Grenier is creative director of Thinkwell, a global design and production agency creating custom, content-driven experiences in the physical world. Emily Baltz is an immersive experience director and multisensory artist whose expertise lies in using the 5 senses to tell stories that deepen engagement through embodiment. Moderator Gregory Harper is founding president of Harper Vision Associates, a firm dedicated to the development and implementation of cutting-edge technology for business communication, digital media production, and distance learning. His work currently focuses on developing systems and business strategies. For over 20 years, Greg has advised top international financial institutions and has been awarded 26 U.S. patents in digital media and interactive TV. And now, let's begin.
When we built Neue House, David Rockwell was the architect on this. We really wanted to come up with a place that felt like home. To do that, it was really important that technology take a back seat. We really wanted the architecture and the experience and living here and making it real to be the most important part. Likewise, in my work in distance learning, I spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to create the classroom experience remotely that is equal to or better than the real classroom experience with a professor actually in the room. And I've often joked that it's not a technology experiment, it really is a psychology experiment. It's really about how to make people feel that they are really truly in a classroom and not in a remote site in China or India or Qatar or wherever else they happen to be. So it's all about interpersonal relationship. It's all about feeling real, making it real. So it was interesting that this conversation came up. The first time I met Emily Baltz, I think we were dressed in a spacesuit of some sort. We were talking about what would it be like if someone from outer space came down and observed us as humans, and how do we interact with spaces? How do we interact with technology? How do we interact with architecture? How do we interact with design? Because ultimately, even though I'm a technologist, technology is really a secondary role. It's really about the experience. It's about the human emotion. It's really about how do you feel, and do you feel good about it? You're an experienced director, experienced design person. I understand you do a lot of stuff with food. One lick, suck, bite, and sniff at a time. What about that? That's.
What about that? I've been described as wearing an astronaut suit, licking, sucking, and biting. Probably none of it makes sense, and I'm really kicking it off in a great awkward fashion.
So why don't we start?
Yeah, I'll introduce myself a little. Hey, everyone. Thanks also to Design Pavilion for having us. I think this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and maybe also my human experience, because I continually force myself into situations where I show up in front of strangers wearing astronaut suits. As said, my name is Emily Baltz, and I work as an immersive experience director with a focus on food and multisensory experiences. So the work that I mainly do in culture is using technology in novel ways to bring people together using their bodies in physical spaces to promote new ways of interacting with each other. I love emotions like awkwardness, delight, joy, and risk. So I'm mostly known for the work that I've done at the intersection of food and technology, but I would say that at heart, my interest in food and food design and food experience design is actually through a designer's lens, food being our only multisensory material on Earth. I have a master's in industrial design, and before then, a BA in screenwriting and contemporary dance. And I've always been interested in how we tell stories in the world, how we make meaning in the world. So through a designer's lens, I was trained in material studies. Like, what can plastic do? Look around you. Wow. When we think of food, it's so incredible. For example, when we eat, we don't just taste. We hear, we smell, we see, we feel. We have an experience that we call flavor, which is actually different than taste. And so in my investigation as a designer in food, what started to bubble up were actually principles that applied to all experience design. And this is a bit of the philosophy that I approach all of my work with, is that we enter the world through our senses. And when we start changing our relationship to them, that's when we start to develop new worlds. And along with that philosophy comes, really practical applications. I do a lot now of brand activations, experiential design. I've worked here in New York on Luxe Intersect, finding new ways for people to engage with the brand through built environments, through different event designs. And presently I'm working on an exhibit at the Museum of the Future that looks at the future of the human body and how we interface with our senses and what that might mean for the future of the human race. All sort of large, high-level topics that are coming to life very soon in 2022. And had the great privilege of working with Emily and a little bit with Greg to activate this new project that's a partnership between Google and ThinkWell that explores, I think, the future of storytelling, specifically in digital physical spaces. How might we make experiences more accessible to designers all around the world? I also teach here locally too at the School of Visual Arts in the Products of Design program, which is spearheaded by Alan Stone. And there I started the first experience design studio that again focuses on how we might use the senses as a toolkit for experience design. As I said before, I think the senses are our prime way of understanding the world. So as designers, if we can create more fluency in ourselves, we also now have room to play, evolve, and innovate in this space like never before. So I'm very excited to share with you my most awkward project. I'll let it run. This is the Lickestra, the world's first and so far only lickable ice cream orchestra. I love to share this project in presentations, and I can't really see all your faces. I see like hair lights. But usually what happens in an audience is everyone sort of like, you hear these sort of muffled ha ha ha, and then some faces are like,
That was my face.
yeah. Oh my God, what did you do? Obviously, you can see I come from a performative background. I love the performance of everyday life too. So, how, for example, can we use sensory design and technology in something as simple as licking ice cream and start to play with our senses to deliver a totally new experience, herein designed to promote play, but also designed to promote risk? Because we all know what else this thing starts to suggest, right? So walking this liminal line between, I think, emotions like awkwardness, like risk, like play, like delight, are, I think, really human moments as we all sit up here and wonder, oh my God, is this talk gonna go well? Oh, we're so excited to talk about this. But at the same time, we're always kind of in this tension as humans. You know, this is much more of a piece of my artistic practice, and I apply those learnings to my professional practice as well, trying to understand how can we design human behavior, human emotions, and use technology to facilitate new experiences therein. And pass it off to the other Émilie.
And it says Émilie Grenier, that you want to forget, for instance, where you are? What does that mean?
So yes, forgetting where we are, transforming spaces with technology, transforming spaces with emotion, with heart and mind, working with high tech to deliver magic, and forget the high gear behind it all. So my name is Émilie F. Grenier. I'm the creative director of Thinkwell Studio Montreal, and I believe in the beauty of unexpectedness, which is where most of my work stems from, in that threshold between reality and magic. And when I talk about magical realism, people often think that the reality that I refer to is straightforward in a connect the dots kind of way. But the reality that I like to design with is more like this: a rich, multi-layered, complicated space where the dots can be reconfigured endlessly. And from that space, as a designer, I've been a part of projects that have imagined that biosynthetic root systems might be the future of the luxury textile industry. I've taught knitting machines how to code. I've transformed photovoltaic solar panel cells into digestible aperitif, food design.
Wow.
I've used the planet's most prevalent mineral to reimagine the way in which we design for the 1% without perhaps going to hell. I taught a bot how to do your shopping, and I woke up a sleeping parliament. Today, I head creative at Thinkwell, and just like everyone else, we've just come out of too many months of working side by side, sitting at invisible digital tables, thinking about who and what humans might want to be at the end of this deep, dark tunnel. So in the spirit of finding beauty in the unexpected, I wanted to leave you with a 2-minute reel of our teams coming out of their digital dwellings and integrating work into physical spaces that they sometimes hadn't even met in real life before producing entire shows that now live within them forever. Here are the last few months at Thinkwell Studio Montreal.
Epic work, amazing.
The title of this thing was about awkwardness. What do you mean by awkwardness, and how does awkwardness work in design?
To me, it has kind of this opposite pull. It's a word that makes me almost like physically recoil. It's something that I can't distinguish, or almost can't, from something that's absolutely emotional. It gives me a physical reaction. It brings me to that extreme level of discomfort.
Truly. I define it as liminal spaces, something that is slightly abnormal, slightly out of tradition. It exists at the edges of our comfort zones. And as a person, what I'm most interested in, and as a designer, what I'm most interested in is growth, development. I love working at the edge of innovation. I love seeing people develop themselves. Also, teaching is such a joy for that. I love making things that have never been made before. And in order to achieve that, what I always seek out is actually a feeling of being awkward, because I sort of know then that I'm in the right spot. You know,
So you're trying to get people out of their comfort zone?
Myself included, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily, like the goal is not to force people into awkwardness, but how can we use that as a device in our own creative process to know when we're hitting on something that is potentially new? Like that's the holy grail, I think, for all designers, is that we're continually trying to innovate and invent. So often what I look for are feelings inside of myself, right? Little jitters, like, is this feeling slightly uncomfortable? Yes. Well, that's most likely because I'm in new territory. So that, I think, on the practice side, and then in terms of actual product design, trying to implement things like negative space within a highly dense environment, moments of silence, a void, moments where people are left kind of to their own devices. And in experience design, we're obviously in the business of guiding people through something, right? Almost designing a scene if you were in theater. Storytelling, exactly. So what happens when the story stops is one question I always ask. What do people do when they're left to their own devices? And that's a really interesting space, because it often, I think all designers meet that with like, no, we have to tell them what to do, or there's always a moment there, as well as participants. What happens when we are left to do something? And as you said, which I think is such a beautiful way, like it's not about the technology, it is about the psychology. So if we've done our job, we've actually set them up to sort of do exactly what they need to be doing in that space.
Would you say that the end point in the experience should also feel awkward? How do we connect with the human at the end of it? Because the process within which you work has this level of fuzziness and of discovery through discomfort. Is that something that is a part of the output?
I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this too. One thing I go back to is the law of contrasts in psychology. Yeah. So when we go into a dark space, the light is brighter, right? When we experience, and I think we've experienced that as a people going through a pandemic, not nearly out of it yet. But do the bright moments feel sweeter now? Do our human relationships feel more valuable? And those principles also apply to experience design. And that's where I think using awkwardness intentionally is an opportunity not to deliver that as the end product, but to offer some topography within experience design to make the next moment in higher contrast, whatever that is that we try to do. So for me, it's often a device to create more beauty, to create more joy, to create more delight, to create permission as well, you know, in those spaces. So I think that as a piece of emotion, sticking it, knowing when to insert it is obviously the real skill.
Emily, you spoke about being on the threshold of reality and magic. How does that interact with this?
So I like to start with a human. What are they thinking? How do they feel? What are they touching? What are they interacting with? And connecting to that authentic desire to be there. Feeling welcome, feeling engaged, feeling safe, feeling like they are within permission, or they know when to break the rules or how to break the rules, and you can design that in the experience as well. In order to do that, and this is where magical realism is such an important space for me, because it starts with defining the real. It starts with defining your starting point, and this is why I like to pull this image from the cosmos. We all have our own interpretations, and there are guidelines, and there's a Milky Way and constellations, but we're also constantly invited to imagine
what might be up there and how we might connect those dots. Thinking about how we bring now that back into a VR headset, into a physical space. How do we connect our digital selves to our physical selves and remain authentic and keep that magic, keep that boiling desire to experience alive. I was talking about the Parliament project that we did with DPT. The Canadian Parliament was closing their doors for 10 years plus. Ongoing major renovations and refections, and we were invited to create a virtual experience of this iconic building. We had access to hyper-real 3D scans of every of the major rooms, and we were invited to create a tour, if you will. But our first kind of question was, okay, we want this project to exist in the world for about 10 years, and we're working with VR. VR ages in dog years, you know, a month is 4 years, and so how might we choreograph that? Mm-hmm. And the gaze was that answer, was, you know, let's not design with gadgets, let's not even be disorganized by what's available on the market today, but let's go back to a very human way to discover a space, and that's the gaze, and that's the connection. So using high technology, but that can evolve now on its own pace, but bringing back the human experience and the gaze in that sense. I know that you work a lot with scent and olfactive, which is why I love working with you, because you bring whole new questioning here and this whole other aspect, and how you bring that into the corporate world or into physical spaces or architectural spaces. I really respond to that in such a grateful way.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. Also, your original prompt too, like how do we make magic? Taking a known and making it unknown suddenly. We start to then push at the boundaries of what we think of as real. There's suddenly a possibility opens, like your image of the constellations, right? Suddenly we might believe there is a different dimension that's there. We can think of our body in that way as like our programming for reality. You know, like when I see a cup of coffee, I know what it smells like. What happens if that coffee smells of flowers, right? And then suddenly, you know, through technology, if we can think of it fantastically, something starts to bloom within it, and we can tell an entire story about a being, you know? So when we use one sense to tell a story of something else, we start to create new connections in our mind that then open up this space, which maybe we might call magic. I would never declare that, but can start to hint at it.
So I was intrigued by your power plant project, because you used projection and design, all the rest. So that was an experience of coming into a space. But it's not a space that people come into every day. It's more of a visitor type thing. Have you looked at things that would happen for people on a regular day-to-day basis, as opposed to a unique visit to a museum or that thing in the forest? I mean, that looked like a wonderful experience, but it felt to me like that had a finite amount of time. How do we keep that magic and alive, even though you're there every single day and it's not a museum type event?
Well, I think the collaboration with Google here hints to some types of answer, and using cloud-based principles and really connecting that ephemeral digital space to a physical embodiment. You know, and a journey is a good example. Journey management. What's a journey? It's a point A to B within which we have multiple encounters with our digital selves or others' digital selves. It's the same kind of show control that we use for these one-time power plant or forest-like ticketed event. It's really using that logic and using that design, you know, principle and process, but applying it to that
day-to-day stuff.
Absolutely.
I'm a technologist, but I'm also a firm believer that technology should be in the background. How do you go about taking an existing space or a space that doesn't exist yet and think about it not based on what today's technology is, based on what the experience is? I mean, is it all about activating senses and changing it continuously? Is it evolving? How does that really work?
I want to push humanity in the right direction. That's like my own creative direction for everything that I create, that we create. I think, well, we leave a legacy, and so the decisions that we make today have an impact that pushes humanity in that right way. And I personally feel like having screens everywhere, jumbotrons that break and turn off and become black mirrors is an awful way to leave a trace and leave an impact. So thinking about timelessness in its pure connection to architecture, to the built world around us, and how we might integrate it with today's top tech, tomorrow's top tech, but really reflect on the way in which it isn't about the shape of this thing. It isn't about the weight of this thing today. It's what all of these devices allow for, whether that be signage, whether that be create an emotional response, and finding an ageless way to integrate technology so that the content can really survive here and connect.
You know, in a practical way, when you say, you know, how do we use technology, I think we use it in the same way that we always have. And maybe we try to think of it more through universal themes instead of where we have found ourselves in culture, which is transactional. So, you know, technology is not new. Fire was our first form of technology. So I like to think about it in that sense of like the organization of multiple parts, a tool that we're using to facilitate human behavior. And if we think about what we've always needed as people, we've always needed places of gathering, places for connection, for exchange, for intimacy, for care, for trade. We have some sort of truisms that we need as people. And so when we think about using technology today, in some ways, we should not think of it in any other way than we always have, I think. And maybe try to make it a little bit more pure so it does disappear, so it doesn't become solely a means of advertising, of monetization, of transaction. So we remain as humans. We don't become credit cards. And I feel quite passionate about that, saying it out loud. And when we think about the design of experiences, often what we're starting to see and starting to experience as people is just the opposite of that, right? I'm being barraged by screens, by things that blink. Why? Because neurologically it puts every human into a state of overstimulation and like fosters more purchasing. So if we really think about how technology might enable more human experiences, what if as designers and as an industry we started to look at it through a human perspective, which of course also includes the human body. So instead of staring at a screen and basically being hit by photons in my face, right? How else can information be disseminated? How else can we be communicated to as people? And we have all this other stuff that also tells our bodies stories. When we smell something, we have certain cultural codes that we all respond to. When we touch something, certain materials mean different things. We can communicate care, we can communicate speed. These are all principles and tools that, again, are in our toolkit as designers that I think if we just bubble them back up to the surface, technology becomes one of them, but it doesn't become the dominant. And I think that's a real call to action for all experience design in the world, especially when we get into this sort of networked ecosystem that we're all living in. We're only ever, the metaverse is here, like done. We're bits. But how do we then use those networks to foster these human needs instead of just pushing pixels, of finding more two-dimensional ways of life? And those are questions, and they're abstract, and they're big for everyone. But a little shift of lens, a little shift of mindset within all of us points us in a totally different direction at the end of the day with the products that we deliver. So I think that in all of our practices is like really upstream. The place for all of us to start is to reframe how we start to define experience and how we think of technology as a tool, not as the material.
And I presume sound and light are in there. You mentioned smell, but
yeah,
sound, I've got to believe, is an important part of that.
Oh my gosh, someone recently asked me, what is the thing you missed most through the pandemic? And I really took time to think about it, and I was like, you know what? Sound. I have never existed in such a void. Like, headphones all day long, looking at a screen is not real. There's acoustics, there's reverberations. We walk into a coffee shop, we can hear, and we actually also feel through sound waves the presence of others, the presence of physical space. And those are little nuances that even within a 2D environment, we can start to think about with the advancement that we have in spatialized sound and 360 audio. we can make more human digital environments as well. If we also start thinking of it, I think, through the lens of neurological principles, the frequency of sound is a really dimensional experience, right? It's not stereo.
Yeah.
And light also in fragmented ways. Like the light that we're experiencing here is not flat, it's also dimensional. It's specular, right? There are little highlights in funny places, and it changes as we move our head. And in great VR, in like amazing game design, you see that touch start to happen. And then I think more and more do we start getting into a place where we can then deliver on these emotional principles that we're talking about. Because the technology is getting out of the way and it's starting to understand more about how humans are built, operate, and receive information, I think.
What I missed was actually scent, smell, overload, olfactive overload. And New York is the best place to experience olfactive overload. So not only people, of course we miss people, we like traveling in packs, and so, but this multi-layered experience of an overload that doesn't come from pixels, from, you know, just being able to dissect the senses almost. I felt I had a very clear mind, a very clear body and heart, being able to really dial into the different layers of senses and sensory experience just within the actual experience of the world. So not even, you know, a designed experience, but life itself.
Yeah.
It seems we're searching for extreme experiences, which is leading to overload. What are the simple experiences that you want to bring more attention to?
We were discussing authenticity. And I think that as a creative director of major immersive moments, thinking about the anti-black box as a design principle, I like to start with the world and the space and augmenting the experience of that and revealing stories that are hidden, but you don't have to go very far or listen very deep to find them and reveal them. And so the power plant in Niagara Falls is a great example of that. Starting with a space that has so many stories to tell and using very high tech, high impact technology to deliver that message. But it does leave you with a feeling of empowerment because you didn't hide, you revealed. And so it comes from a more human, authentic place.
Yeah. I think I would build on that and say that one of the spaces I'd love to see more explored in experience design is presence, because that might be the simplest space to be in. How do we create more presence within our guests, within our design process? Most of the immersive experiential world right now, when you talk about sensory overload, is about taking us out of our bodies, out of our relationships with other people who are experiencing it. And I would love to see more of a return that the experience is about coming either back to our bodies, so understanding, you know, realizing how we work as people, just to create that kind of simplicity in our experience, as well as how we might engage with other people in a present way. That is something that we as a culture and as a people have really moved away from due to all sorts of economic, socio-political reasons. But how do we allow that moment of relief, that it's okay to just be a person, it's okay to just be together, it's okay to just sometimes do nothing. I think that if we can start to address those moments where a person feels good about themselves just by being themselves, where a person feels like they are seen fully by someone else or by an experience, we start then to really design, I think, at the most base level of human experience. And hopefully that gives us some roots to grow really healthy, you know, responsive societies.
Are our sensory experiences different from one another? Do you consider demographics when creating design concepts?
Well, I'll respond with that the future is fluid, so I'm going to start from there. I do think that, like any design project, understanding your audience and understanding the demographic that you're designing for is essential. I wouldn't necessarily say that I have gender first and foremost, more psychographics than demographics. Where are people coming from in their lives? What are they attracted to? What piques their curiosity? What kind of cultural references might they have? I think those are sort of humanistic principles that as designers, I love to promote and embrace because it gets us also out of binaries and really starts to embrace whole people. Trying again to exist more in emotional spaces rather than saying, since you appear in this body, you will respond to this. I don't think that's where we are as people anymore, and really try with our work to promote more universal themes. How might we create, a sense of happiness? How might we create a sense of surprise or of delight? Because there is no universal rightness for anyone, right? There's no way that I could draw a line in the sand and say, this kind of person reacts only in this way, and that person reacts in that way.
So I will respond with a quote, which I will translate as I go, from Jean Renoir, a French cineast, who said that he always kept a door open on his film sets for le hasard, for unexpectedness, and like I said, the beauty in unexpectedness and scripting it in our everyday lives and leaving that door open for the awkward to enter, for empathy to engage. I love that quote for that.
Yeah, people being people in the most people ways.
Thank you very
so much.
Merci.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you'll return for the next session of the Visionary series on experience design. Please stay tuned.